NIS2 and DORA don't mention Kafka by name, but they don't have to. If your Kafka holds data that your business depends on, it's in scope. Let me show you where the requirements actually are. NIS2 Article 21 subsection C requires business continuity and backup management. ISO 27001, which NIS2 references as its gold standard, contains controls for information backup and redundancy. If your Kafka is part of a critical process, you need to be able to back it up and restore it. And then there's DORA, which applies to financial institutions and critical infrastructure. It has its own backup concepts, which includes requirements for offline backups and air gapping. And a common thread across all of these. If you have a system that retains data that your business relies on, and Kafka typically does, then you need to have a backup and restore capability. Here's what I see in practice. Companies are using Kafka as a communication layer between services. And the teams think that the data passing through it is transient. But if something goes wrong and the data disappears, the downstream impact is often real. And under NIS2, you're expected to demonstrate that your recovery actually works. Not just have a plan on paper, but actually perform the restore, document how long it took, maintain an audit trail. Allow me to show you how you can cover that.
With Kafka, you can configure a backup on all your Kafka topics. We'll do so in the UI here. First, we need to give it a name. And then we get to select which event hub or Kafka we want to source our data from. I'll go ahead and just call this Kafka prod. And I'll use the connection from my Confluent Cloud cluster that I'm using for this demo. Credential-wise, you can create some new credentials or use existing ones. I'll go ahead and use the credentials I have pre-set up for this demo. Then we get to select where we want to send our data. We can either opt to send it to one of the major cloud vendors. The S3 option here also gives you the ability to integrate any S3 compatible API. For this demo, I'll just go ahead and use a volume, a Kubernetes volume. I'll call this then storage and give it a size. Moving on, I can select some extra options like compression. I'll not do this for now. And move on to the next one. This gives us the framework. We can submit this. All that's remaining now is to select which topics we want to protect. I can do so in a manual fashion, selecting one by one, or more convenient, I'll just use a pattern. For this scenario, I'll just use a wildcard, which will protect all our topics. So the backup is now initializing. What's important to mention here is that this entire setup runs in your own infrastructure. So there's no data moving outside of your network. Everything stays inside your data centers. And that's important because adding SaaS tools to your stack means updating risk management, going through procurement and all the things that slow you down. And this pretty much is it in terms of setting up a backup with Kafka. You are now protected.
As you can see, Kafka gives you history, metrics, and documentation. And if your auditor asks if your Kafka backup actually works, you can show them. So if you're working towards NIS2 or DORA compliance and your Kafka isn't covered yet, go check out the Kafka sandbox and see how fast you can have it covered.